Since all this started, it seems a lot has happened. Washington Post political reporter Colby Itkowitz joins us now to talk about what has happened, where we are, where things stand at this point. So Colby, first of all, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start here with what was announced today from the acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. He said that the aid to Ukraine was tied to the request for the investigation into the 2016 election. Why is that significant, and what does that really mean?
Right. So for the acting chief of staff to essentially confirm that there was some kind of quid pro quo between withholding military aid for Ukraine and them doing some kind of investigation on our domestic politics flies in the face of everything that the president has been saying since this whole thing began. The president has repeated the phrase, no quid pro quo, no less than 1,000 times. But now we have his acting chief of staff standing up there in front of the world and saying, yeah, that absolutely there was a connection between us withholding aid and whether or not Ukraine would look into issues that arose during the 2016 election.
So how has the White House responded so far to this inquiry? Are they cooperating?
To the inquiry in general, you couldn't say cooperating. They've been telling anyone that's been subpoenaed that works for them or who works for the State Department not to cooperate with congressional investigators. The president has said he will not answer any subpoenas or overturn any documents until Nancy Pelosi agrees to take a formal House vote on the impeachment inquiry. He's accused the Democrats of doing this in a partisan way by just unilaterally deciding to have an impeachment inquiry. She in no way is required to hold a vote to start an impeachment inquiry. She can just have her committees start doing so. But the president is using that as a reason to not cooperate.
There was a second whistleblower who came forward at one point in this process.
Yeah, and I don't think we've heard much about that since. The Congress is talking to witnesses from the State Department. They heard from someone who quit because they were so distraught by all of this, someone that worked in the State Department. They spoke to Gordon Sondland, who is an ambassador to the EU today. They're still talking to him as we speak. And he apparently is offering other damning information about the president and the president's directions on what to ask of Ukraine and what he wanted in return for other things. And so we'll get a further readout on that at the end of the day.
So what comes next in this impeachment inquiry? Is there anything that we should all be watching for to play out next?
Sure. Well, I mean, the big thing is Rudy Giuliani's role is a huge part. The former New York mayor and a close friend and personal attorney to the president. He has said that he will not cooperate with any subpoenas that come forth from Congress. And obviously, Rudy Giuliani was the person that was doing the president's bidding over in Ukraine. He was there trying to make these investigations happen. And so whether or not he gets deposed at any point, whether or not he ends up cooperating, because this ambassador had been told by the president to work with Rudy Giuliani on those engagements with Ukraine.
All right, so lots more to watch for. Colby Itkowitz from the Washington Post, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.